So this week I wrote an op-ed that is based on this that chanting that I heard from the Teachers Dissident National Coordinator of Education Workers Union. They had a in Spanish this group is known as the La Gente, and they were protesting here in Mexico City, and they were chanting "No World Cup." No World Cup, no habrá mundial, no habrá mundial. Literally, that's what they were chanting, which is, the fact that they have these marches and these protests taking place this week is no coincidence because it was this week when President Claudia Sheinbaum unveiled Mexico's FIFA World Cup 2026 program in at Los Pinos. It's not about football, the president said. The best football, it's about us. And it was she basically said that this is not about only football and these big, games that are going to take place. It's about Mexico's image around the world. And this is really important because as starting right now, there's a lot of attention on Mexico and its ability to to be able to make sure this World Cup takes place without major hitches. It's Mexico's image, literally, is at stake. And we have, at least in the last couple of weeks, we have there's a lot of discontent. Farmers are protesting crop prices. Communities like Uruapan are protesting because they're being threatened and literally killed by organized crime. The Madres Buscadoras, these mothers that are looking for their children that have been disappeared, they are denouncing record disappearances in Mexico's. Doctors and patients are marching over the lack of resources for the Mexico's health system. Judges are complaining of broken promises. Those who retired because the judicial elections take place, they haven't been paid their pensions. And now we have this new youth movement, this Z generation that is protesting, a movement that was born in Discord, Instagram, and TikTok. Well, they have also had their protests this week, even though the president literally questioned whether these were genuine protests, and did they come from genuine citizens who are discontent with her government. The fact is, there's a lot of protests taking place, and it makes sense. Obviously, any group that is angry at the Mexican government for whatever reason, they're going to be doing a lot of protests this week. And like the teachers union said, there will be no World Cup. No World Cup is their chant, is that they're basically threatening the Mexican government to literally sabotage the World Cup and the games in Mexico. Now, Mexico's FIFA representative, Jürgen Manka, at this event that took place with the rollout of the World Cup in Los Pinos, he insists that security is under control. Apparently that FIFA has been working with the Mexican government for the last 3 years. Protocols are set to protect, he said, protect fans, teams, and referees in 2026. But yet organizers privately worry about more protest and on the one hand, but they when you have these major games, you have to worry about, obviously, fans protests, but you have also terrorist threats, cyber attacks to infrastructure, airport blockades, even natural disasters. The recent tragedies highlight how Mexico City is not prepared for certain types of disasters. If you all recall, there was this gas tanker that exploded in Mexico City in September, killing at least 32 people. Analysts have been warning that Mexico may not be prepared, although if we're talking about being ready for natural disasters or non-natural disasters, with a lot of resources and a lot of training, Mexico could be prepared in the next 7 months. However, the bigger risk that there is to the security of the World Cup in Mexico. It has to do with political risk. Organized crime could exploit the World Cup for leverage. They may try to seize the spotlight, just as student protests did before the 1968 Olympics. If you all recall, not the during the 1968 Olympics, that before it took place, months, weeks before it took place, there was major protests, major violence by, well, not violence by students, but there was a massacre of students who knew and understood that weeks before any major event, in that case, it was the 1968 Olympics, the world's attention is on the country that is sponsoring this event. In that case, it was Mexico. And the Mexican government would not tolerate that because, quote unquote, it could affect its image. Well, we may be facing something very similar. Obviously, unions, activists, criminal organizations, student protest, people who've been threatened, crops that are not being paid or supported. I mean, any person who feels that the government is not paying attention to him, this is the time, this is literally the time that they are going to start protesting. And the government is going to have to make a very difficult decisions. They are either going to listen to the protesters and try to negotiate. So by the time in the next weeks, as we get closer to the inaugural event in June, that at least the protest will be under control, or they will mitigate the impact of the protest on national infrastructure on the highways. Remember, when protests take place, they naturally are going to take over airports, main highways, just make it almost impossible to move around a city like Mexico City or Guadalajara or Monterrey, where the games are going to be taking place. But you also have concern that when these protests take place, there's also could be a decision by the government to have to confront them, and the reaction of these groups could be violence. And what the Mexican government is trying to avoid is not only the impact on Mexico, on the image of Mexico, but making sure that these games take place peacefully and without a hitch. So the government has very few alternatives. Either they start negotiating with these groups, trying to anticipate what these protests are going to be about, make sure that they have the intelligence that allows them to at least anticipate which of these groups are going to be more violent, or who's behind them, and who is that what are they demanding. And two, they need to sit down and talk to them. And there are real demands from these groups then. And this, if it's the only way that they can be heard is by protesting and sabotaging Mexico's image during the World Cup or before the World Cup, they're definitely going to do it. And the time is ticking. There's only 7 months before the inaugural event takes place in Mexico. So they only have 7 months to make sure that our demands are listened. Otherwise, once the World Cup takes place and it's all over, you better bet that nobody's going to listen to them, especially the Mexican government. So we should expect and watch very closely these protests and the strategy of the Mexican government to address, as we are 7 months away from the World Cup. And remember, they're chanting. There's groups already chanting, "No World Cup, no World Cup."